something that occurred 6 days later, in fact, he was only relaxing, would really affect the quality of his play. But you also have to acknowledge this. When he dropped that first pass, and I believe it was on the first drive, what was the first thing you thought about when he dropped that pass?
The first thing
Didn't
was
you
the
think
boat,
about the
obviously.
boat?
I mean,
Right.
it was.
So
Yeah, it was pretty much like, like throughout the game they're giving stats. Oh, the boat crew has caught this many passes, and the non-boat crew has caught this many passes. You're right. Undoubtedly, it's bad optics to be partying in Miami when you're supposed to be kind of thinking about and preparing for a playoff game. But it's hard to really. On the surface, it seems like it's easy to kind of just attribute that to that. But I really don't think that it's going to ultimately affect his career trajectory. I think you also have to keep in mind that this was Odell Beckham's first playoff game. He had never played in a playoff game before, and he had also never played in cold conditions at Lambeau Field like that before. So the experience factor definitely has to come in there as well.
for sure, but don't you think a lot of athletes try to say that they don't see what the media is saying about them, and that their thoughts that they have laser focus on the task at hand. But don't you think the first thing that Odell thought about when he dropped that first pass was also kind of the media and the boat? Because to me, I don't buy that when he was dropping those passes, and I hate that I'm going this direction, because I literally all week I was saying how silly it was that we were talking about this. But now that he had such a horrific game, and yes, we've seen it before on occasion, but on this biggest stage, he's had such a horrific game. I just feel like there's no way that he wasn't thinking about this during the game, and there's no way that this wasn't a distraction in his head. And then in the post-game press conference, he even said, "You guys," he blamed the media. He pointed the finger and said, "You guys made it a distraction. For us, it actually wasn't a distraction. You made it a distraction." Well, guess what? When the media makes something a distraction, it's a distraction, period. Right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's not. Yes, I think it was in his head, but I think that's also on him for putting it in his head.
I agree with that.
It is tough to block out the noise, especially nowadays. Like you hear people saying, "So, oh, I don't look at Twitter. I don't read all the articles." Come on, really? You don't look at your phone for 2 seconds every day and see what people are saying about you. You don't see any of those headlines. No, not one of your friends or family sends you a link to an article about you. You're able to see right through that for a lot of it. But I also feel like he could have. Well, in the first place, he could have made it not a distraction by just not doing it. But then again, if he was going to do it, it's not a problem unless he kind of just says, "I did it, I'm moving on," rather than kind of making it into more of a story than it was. Yes, I think undoubtedly after he dropped that first pass, he's probably thinking, "Oh God, they're going to talk about the boat now." But I think that's also on him to say, okay, all right, drop one pass. It's not the end of the game. Shake it off. Next possession, forget about that one. Instead of going out there, keeping it in his head, and then dropping another pass.
If he catches that touchdown pass, do you think it's safe to say? Well, it's definitely not safe to say the Giants win the game, but there's no way of knowing this. If you were to give it your best guess, Odell Beckham catches the ball on the left sideline in the first quarter. I believe it was the second drive of the game for a touchdown. The Giants are now up 10-0. How do you think that could have really turned that game around, or changed the end result?
I think if the Giants had a much better first quarter or first half in general, that game would have turned out so much differently. They had Sterling Shepard also had a drop in the end zone at one point too.
That's right.
And the Giants had a couple of huge drives get down really close, and they couldn't capitalize, and they had to settle for field goals. I think if those two field goals had turned into touchdowns, and if Odell Beckham had caught that not had that first drop on that 3rd and 5 play on the first possession of the game, the Giants could have been up 21-0 in the first few minutes and really put the game out of reach really quickly. I think the game could have been unbelievably different if those drops didn't happen.
I agree. I mean, I was watching that game, and I thought it was so interesting how the Packers came out. They were playing press coverage with their defensive backs with no safety help. I mean, it was really a puzzling defensive strategy right out of the gates. And Eli recognized it. He was taking his shots, and his receivers weren't making plays. Like you said, it could have easily been 21-0 early in that game, or 14-0, if not that. And the Giants couldn't take advantage. And then what does Aaron Rodgers do? He gets hot. Why? Because he's Aaron Rodgers. And then the defensive line got hot. The defensive line, on the other hand, got cold. And Aaron Rodgers was buying himself time like he does so well. Hey, do you have a Super Bowl pick?
Super Bowl pick, I would have to say at this point, without the Giants in it, that it would be very, very hard to pick against the Patriots right now. Not necessarily because they're so good, but because everyone else has so many big glaring flaws. I think if the Giants had made it past the Packers, I would think they would have a very, very good shot at making it to the Super Bowl and probably playing the Patriots. But I just don't see it. It's unfortunate to say, but I really don't see any other team besides maybe Dallas that can get past them. And Dallas is so inexperienced. Who knows how Dak and Zeke will play in the playoffs? I think the only safe pick is really the Patriots here, and the only team that has beaten this iteration of the Patriots in the Super Bowl is now gone. So it's hard to pick again.
Yeah, you see, my Super Bowl was Steelers-Packers. And one of the big takeaways I took from this wild card weekend is no matter how you put it, that bye week matters. Because, like I said, I had the Steelers and the Packers, and you have Big Ben going down, and they're saying the injury is minor. But a tweaked ankle is a tweaked ankle. And Jordy Nelson also left the game for the Packers. That one's looking more serious. So a lot of people debate, and we're probably going to hear it come Friday this week. Does the bye week make these teams rusty? Or do they keep them fresh? And every single year, sports talk is almost like a broken record sometimes, it seems. Every year we have that discussion, but the reality is the bye week matters, and we saw it with the Steelers and we saw it with the Packers. If you can survive one game where you're not losing any more soldiers, that's a positive. So I'm not sure. I have the Steelers,
Yeah.
but Ben's got to be healthy. I have the Packers, but Jordy's got to be healthy.
Yeah, I mean the only other team that could possibly win it all, I think, is the Steelers if Ben Roethlisberger is healthy. I just don't see any of the teams in the NFC being able to stop either of those teams. The only team that has a remote chance is Dallas, and like I said, that's a big red flag having your two best players essentially your two best players be rookies who have not played in the playoffs before.
Now you're a Giants fan,
I follow both the Giants and the Titans. I'm kind of split between both of them, just like a lot of stuff. A lot of things are split between New York and Nashville.
Okay, right. But as a Giants fan, and actually as a New Yorker, you don't like Boston very much. You're not a huge fan of New England, right? It's safe to say that.
Can't say I am. That's for sure.
But you can't be too fond of the Dallas Cowboys either. So it sounds like you have Cowboys Patriots. Who would you be rooting for?
I would watch the game and hope for a good football game at that point. I would say, I'm gonna be unhappy with whoever wins this one. So just let it all happen. If anything, I would want the Patriots to win just because, Patriots fans have already had enough happiness and, another Super Bowl ring, which would be like, all right, Patriots won again. Cool. But if the Cowboys won again, could you imagine how much Dallas fans would talk and talk and talk and talk about that? I mean, it would be like, I could already hear the Dak Prescott is better than Eli Manning talk. Like, right, like I could just hear it already if Dallas had won this, if Dallas goes on to win the Super Bowl. But I mean, in that case, probably just the Patriots because it's superfluous to give Tom Brady another ring. To be perfectly honest.
You went the cruel way, though. Usually everyone's talking about, the Patriots always win. So, or the Patriots have been so successful, and they've already had their rings. So, it's time for the Dallas fan base to get their glory day, but not with you. That's a little cruel. No sympathy for the Dallas fans.
It's only if it were any other fan base playing the Patriots, I would be rooting for them, basically.
Right. Well, I'd be going with Dallas. I think that they're a lot more likable this year with Dak and Zeke. For some reason, there's something attractive about two rookies having fun. Probably they don't really understand where they are. And this is the interesting thing about Tony Romo and Ezekiel Elliott is Derek Jeter said this, I believe. I hope I'm not wrong. I believe Derek Jeter said this where someone asked him about the young guys in sports, right? And in the postseason, don't you think that they're less fit to handle the pressure? I thought this was very interesting. Derek Jeter said, no, no, no. It's actually the older guys who feel more nerves and who feel more pressure in big moments, because the older guys understand the magnitude of the moment, where the young guys, they kind of have a blissful ignorance where they don't really understand where they are or how big it is, and they can actually perform even better than the older guys. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I could see definitely merits to that. Jeter's wise, so I trust Jeter.
Yeah, Jeter is certainly wise. That's for sure. I hope I didn't misquote him there, though. Other than that, though, man, a lot of blowouts. And the NFL has struggled with their product, and there's been so much made of the ratings for the NFL this year. I believe they're down 10%, which is a huge number. And when you're talking about millions and millions of people, 10% is a giant number. And once again, they have a wild card weekend where the Giants-Packers game was awesome for a while there. But other than that, they got a lot of duds. So it's kind of interesting that the NFL seems to be struggling to basically struggling with their product.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about his wildcard weekend that I saw, especially that Raiders-Texans game that was, set up to be a disaster in some way, but it can't help but think if things didn't work out the way they did in Week 16 with both Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota going down with injuries, do you imagine like that it could have gone from being one of the worst playoff games ever, which it was, to one of the best ones if you saw a Derek Carr versus Marcus Mariota showdown in Nashville. That would have been an absolutely epic game, because those are the two guys that get compared all the time in terms of that rookie class. Jameis Winston's kind of out of that, but that really would have been an incredible matchup to see. And I think a lot of what's gone on with ratings is just because a lot of the product on the field has been, subpar in some way. There are very few objectively very good football teams. But we wouldn't have said that a few years ago, but now I think it's the truth.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's kind of weird because I think it's just a phase, but it's definitely the league. The makeup of the league right now is pretty interesting, where the draws are not what they used to be. I mean, it's hard to see a flawless, dominant teams. The Patriots were really good this year, but the landscape of the NHL is really interesting. The NHL, on the other hand, our favorite sport, that hasn't disappointed this year, right? This has been a fun year.
This has been an absolutely fun year, and I think what you're really seeing around the league is just this youth movement that is just in its beginning phase and is going to really take the league by storm. You see guys like Patrick Laine, Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, all these guys really just tearing it up, playing out of their minds and showing off what the kind of direction that the league is going in with all the speed and the skill and just how crazy good those guys are. And I think you're seeing a lot of that go on this year, and I think you're seeing across the board a very, very, very good product. And I think, like a lot of years in the NHL recently, you're going to see some very, very good hockey teams not make the playoffs.
I feel bad for the goalies. My goodness. These this young breed of players are they're mind blowing. Like you said, their speed and their skill.
I don't know how some of these goalies are able to stop Connor McDavid. When you see Connor McDavid flying at you down the middle, the number of moves he can make in such a short span, you're dead in the water right there if you see Connor McDavid flying at you down the middle unguarded.
Yeah. So the Rangers, it's been a roller coaster season. But when you think of roller coasters, you think of a lot of ups and downs. With the Rangers, it's kind of been long ups and long downs. Not so much up, down. But they had an incredible start where they put together this awesome win streak. Not only were they winning, but they were scoring like 5 goals a game. And I believe they're still the high-scoring team in the NHL, right? I think
something like that. They're definitely up there for
sure. Then they hit a wall before Christmas. And things start getting ugly, and the defense starts looking slow. But they get a much-needed Christmas break, and now I believe they've won 4 out of their last 5, and they're looking good again. Meanwhile, you got Pavel Buchnevich, Mika Zibanejad, and Rick Nash resting up, ready to come back from injury. How are you feeling about the New York Rangers? And we look at a team whose window may or may not be closing Are they contenders this season based on what you've seen so far?
Well, I mean, I think it would be irrational to say that they are, this perennial Stanley Cup contender like people thought they were a few years ago when they actually made the Stanley Cup final. I think they're a very, very good team that could really make a lot of noise in the playoffs. But I think, there are a few glaring issues with the team that really will keep them out of there. First of all, I want to say their offense, their forwards have been absolutely phenomenal this season. I think their forward makeup compared to last season is so much better, so much deeper than they were last year. Notice how you haven't seen Tanner Glass at all this year. That's a huge, huge plus for the Rangers that they have so much depth that they can keep a lot of the bad players out of their lineup that just roll with 4 lines deep of pure scoring talent. It's absolutely incredible. Some of the bargain deals that Jeff Gordon put together this year were just perfect. Michael Grabner, Brandon Peary, all these guys getting them on cheap contracts to keep this hot streak up. But this forward group is really phenomenal. I think they more or less need to just get their players healthy, get Zibanejad back, get Nash guys back, and it'll if they just keep it up, it'll be great. The only issue is if some of these guys that were only 12 goal scorers last season becoming 30 goal scorers this season, they may have experienced some regression at some point. But I think this forward group is really what's driving this team, and it's sort of masking a defensive unit that is just as bad, if not worse, than they were last season in some way. They don't have Keith Yandel anymore. They've been a little bit banged up. I think it's still some of the same players that are really not as good as they used to be. I think that if the Rangers really want to bring themselves to becoming a more consistent Stanley Cup contender, they really need to bulk up that defensive unit and try to fix some of the issues there. Dan Girardi still, it's been a little bit masked this year since the forward group is so much better, but I think Dan Girardi is still not the defenseman he used to be. He still has some issues with turnovers with some of his defensive zone coverage, but I think they have some good talent there. Brady Shea's been doing pretty well. They've gotten rid of McElrath, who was doing all right, but just kind of the victim of a cap crunch in some way, and with the expansion draft coming up too. But I think they need to fix some of the holes in the defense, but they need to do it in a way that does not hurt them in the long run, like they did with the Keith Yandel trade, because that trade ultimately didn't work out for them. But I think they need to be able to acquire a defenseman that would help them out on that unit, but also wouldn't break the bank. Because could you imagine this forward unit right now with Anthony Duclair on it? Like it would be just the most ridiculous forward group in the league, no question about it.
Yeah. Sater and now Jeff Gordon, his predecessor, they've always been very aggressive at the deadline, and they've, in the last 4 or 5 years, they have really embraced this, win now kind of approach to the trade deadline. Are the days of that, are we confident that the days of those kind of trades are over? You just said that you would like to, you don't want to see any more of those kinds of trades anymore. But from what you've seen, do you think that Gordon is probably on the same page that you are?
I think he is. I think he's shown that in some of the signings he's made and the trades and the savvy trades he's made over the last couple of years. The Brassard for Zibanejad trade being one of them, and getting a guy who's younger on a slightly better contract and more valuable to them. He's a little bit smarter with it. He over the summer he didn't try land the big fish. He didn't try for Okposo. He didn't try for Stahl. He didn't try for any of that. I think he's definitely a little bit savvier about that with when it comes to some of these deals. I think that's the approach that will ultimately win out in the end. I think being too aggressive and breaking the bank to get a guy that's essentially a rental is not exactly what you want to see out of it. And I think they've learned from some of those mistakes, seeing what happened in the end with the Keith Yandel trade, what happened with the Eric Stahl trade last year. I think overall it's hard to not learn from what happened with those deals. So I think he'll be a little bit more reticent at the trade deadline, a little hesitant to do things at the trade deadline. But I think if there's a deal there to get a defenseman that will help out either in depth or in trying to play some big minutes, maybe try to ease the burden off of Girardi, I think that will definitely go a long way. But if they can't, break the bank with the prospects, if they're trading Buchnevich for, a mid-tier defenseman, I don't think that's a very savvy deal at all.
Right. Henrik Lundqvist, you could say that he's been a victim of this defensive core that's looked slow and out of position at times. But his save percentage is 912. His career save percentage is 920. So he's down 8% in that department. As for his goals against, it's 255 in this 2016-2017 season, and his career is 229. So that's, for the first time, a significant dip in Henrik Lundqvist's statistics. Should we be concerned?
I don't think so. I think he's, it's not a big enough fluctuation to really, affect any major changes in, any prevailing public opinion on him. I think obviously he's getting a little bit older. He's not going to be around forever. And I think, but then again, I don't think the cup window necessarily closes with Henrik Lundqvist's retirement. I think if the team can find a way to not have to rely on him as much, I think it'll be a little bit better. I think, some of that is a bit of a result of the defense in front of him in some way, where it's, these defensemen are not doing their job in some way and are allowing more high danger shots to come in on Lundqvist.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that the silver lining in all of this is when we saw the New York Rangers with a healthy Buchnevich, Zibanejad, and Nash, they were simply too fast and scoring too many goals for the opposition to stand a chance. That's why you saw a dominant October and a dominant November out of the New York Rangers. And I guess, you just got to hope that when these forwards are healthy, this offense is so dominant that it can really carry this team. So far, your answers, you haven't made me too optimistic, but could you see that happening, or am I just kind of looking for something to grab onto as I hope and pray that my Rangers can contend this year?
Well, I think it's very possible that the forwards can keep this up. Maybe Michael Grabner really has rejuvenated his career, and now he's going to be now he's going to ratchet up his production. Maybe Brandon Peary keeps this up. Maybe all these guys, maybe a healthy Rick Nash playing with all the depth and not being relied on for scoring, is going to keep this up throughout the year. It's tough to say right now, just because you don't know where the numbers are going to head. I think throughout a lot of the year, their PDO, which is a combination of shooting percentage and save percentage, was abnormally high. And usually when it's that high, you're looking to see a regression at some point, but it just depends on what kind of what transpires later on in the season, and if they can shore up these defensive issues, that makes them not have to rely on some of these forwards as much. It's very possible. Can it carry them to a Stanley Cup? I don't know, based on how talented some of these other teams are in the East, but I think it'll definitely carry them further than they went this year. Certainly not a 5-game embarrassing bounce out to the Penguins like what happened last year.
Yeah, hopefully not. I was at that Game 5, by the way. I've never been to a sporting event quite like that. I mean, let's just say the alcohol consumption at that game was unlike anything I've ever seen. Outside of maybe the Irish at UFC 205. That's it. That's the only thing that I've seen that can compare.
Now you're talking some abnormally high levels there.
That's right. It would be quite unhealthy for any other group of people, but the Irish can pull it off somehow. So the Rangers, just wrapping up with them, they do not have a game until Friday. This is their bye week. Now, what's up with this bye week? I feel like their games have been jumbled up recently. If you look at the standings, they've played 2, sometimes even 3 more games than their fellow Metropolitan Division competitors. So I'm not sure I like this. I'm not sure the players do. What are your thoughts on this bye week?
Well, the bye week, I think it's a very savvy move by the NHL in terms of scheduling. Because in previous years, it's been hard to, it's hard to keep up an 82-game schedule where you're playing 2-3 games a week throughout the season. I think this is a very savvy move by them to be able to, to keep the players happy and give them a little bit of rest, some consistent rest aside from the All-Star break, and it keeps players healthy, it keeps them happy, it keeps them more fresh, because it'll lower the risk for injury when they have like just a week off to be able to, just rest up, do whatever they need to do, just practice a little bit, rehab, whatever they need. And I think it's a very smart move. It's a very good move to keep the players, happy and keep the product good on the ice.
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear. I mean, I just feel like, hey, listen, if it's gonna help Nash, Zibanejad, and Buchnevich recover, then I'm all for it. But I just wonder about scrunching in more games before and after the bye when you can kind of space them out better. But really, you would have to, I guess, look to the players to see what they think about this one.
Yeah, I think the bye week, they're staggered throughout the season, so it's not like 1 week off of the entire league. The teams stagger them throughout the year.
Yeah.
So overall, it's very smart for them to just it's another safety thing that they're doing to keep players safe, keep them healthy, and keep them happy.
Well, that's good. You watching the National Championship tonight?
I absolutely will be watching the National Championship tonight. But to me, it's not Alabama versus Clemson. It's really the SEC versus the world.
Really? Yeah, I was going to ask you. So you have some SEC bias. So I'm guessing. I gather you're picking Alabama.
I am picking Alabama. I mean, I think they're just they're too good. You've seen how they've dominated basically every team they played this year, with really the exception of Washington. I think just how dominant their defense is just going to be too much for Clemson to be able to overcome. And like I said, the SEC is the greatest football conference known to man. So, of course, they're going to dominate this one and retain that title for all time.
How would you respond to the critics who say that the SEC is overrated because they have their quarterback play is very, very poor throughout the conference? I'm stirring things up now.
I think you have to look at a number of other things besides quarterback play. I mean, you've seen them produce some really, really great quarterbacks over the last few years. Cam Newton came out of the SEC among a number of other really talented players. But I think the SEC overall is a very solid conference, top to bottom. And I think it shows in how many titles they've won over the past 10 or 15 years. You saw a period of domination for Florida, a period of domination for LSU, a period of domination for Auburn, for Alabama, all these teams. I think you saw a lot of different teams dominate. This is Alabama's turn to really keep it up.
Here in New York, and we're getting ready to let you go. I know you got somewhere to be. But here in New York, college football, it's so much smaller than it is in the rest of the country, I feel. You've been around. You're in Nashville, Tennessee right now. Do you kind of feel how big does this feel right now? Is everyone kind of gathering around to watch the national championship? Because in New York, hey, it's just another day.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
it's a big difference, right?
In order to really experience SEC football culture, you have to really be in it.
Right.
You have to really kind of be in it, and to see what it's like on Saturdays, when everyone gathers around, and watches the game, and goes to the stadium, goes to tailgates, and then heads in. It's totally different. It's like it's everything here. On Saturdays, you watch whatever comes on, but in New York. But when you're here, Saturdays, it's game day. Get on your polo shirt, get on your khakis, go to the stadium, and have a good time. It's everything here, and that's it's something that when you're living in New York, you don't really get as much because there's not really a big college football team. But I think once you come down here and experience it, it's something that you can't forget. Yeah.
Well, I'll leave you with this. The ACC all the way. Go Orange. How about that?
All right. I understand that. I saw someone walking around campus today wearing Clemson pajamas, a Clemson sweatshirt, a Clemson hat, and an orange tutu.
Oh, so, wow.
I was saying it looks like somebody lost a bet, but I have no idea.
Yeah, or they're just, have something up in the head with Clemson that's not really right, Like the Dave Rothenberg syndrome. I was retweeting Dave Rothenberg tweets all of yesterday because he's crazy. It's unbelievable. Anyway, thanks so much for coming on. It was on late notice. I'm sorry I was a little distracted in the beginning with the stream, but I believe we salvaged the day. And by the way, we did get the stream working a little bit later.
All right.
So it was all good.
Sounds good. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, and feel free to call back anytime. Always love to talk sports to anyone, anytime. So
thank you
so much.
Thank you. Let's do it again. All right. Cutler Klein,
Absolutely.
ladies and gentlemen. That was awesome. Good stuff. All right, let me just turn this down. So that was Cutler Klein, Penalty Box Radio, covering the National Predators, Nashville Predators. We talked a little Odell. We talked about how he's covering NHL hockey right now, and a little bit about that experience. But the stream wasn't working when we were talking about that. In terms of Odell, in case you missed it, he didn't think there was much to it. And he thinks that it's kind of on Odell to put that aside. And if it bothered him mentally, it's not really the action of going on the boat that's the problem, but the fact that he wasn't able to shake that, the fact that he was the fact that the media was able to get in his head, that's the problem. But to me, I just want to reiterate this at the end of the show here, because I know that we were having trouble with the stream. To me, when he dropped that first ball, the first thing he thought about was the boat, because it's the first thing that every one of us thought about. Every single one of us, when he dropped that ball, boat. It's the first thing that popped into our head. And I think that's the first thing that popped into his head. And you know what? When he saw the Eli Manning's throw down the left sideline into the end zone, when he saw that pass in the air, in the back of his mind, he was probably thinking about the first drop. You know, I can't make, I don't want to, I didn't think it would come to this. All week, I didn't even make a video. I didn't even make a quick takes when Odell Beckham and two other Giants receivers were photographed on that boat. I didn't, because I thought it was stupid. I thought it was ridiculous. I thought they would be fine, because it shouldn't matter. But if you do something and the media decides it matters, then it matters. That's it. Anyway, you can stay tuned tomorrow. More content coming at you. National Championship game tonight. I'm going to watch. I don't have much to say really ever about college football. I tried to get a college football guest, but that did not materialize today. But even better, Cutler Klein is one of my favorite guys to talk sports with, and it was really an awesome show for you guys. So we got 19 minutes, 18 minutes, 30 seconds of the stream. I don't know why this isn't working. I'm going to look into it, but this was different. You know, it keeps, different things keep happening, and, you know, I'm not making the same mistakes twice, I promise you. So I'll figure it out, and more content this week coming up. Before I go, I just want to talk a little about the channel in general, about my guests. I have already booked a guest for February 6th, who's going to be my first real, legitimate, professional, and Cutler is very legitimate. He's probably the most accoladed guest that I've had so far. But I'm going to start to kind of put the pedal to the metal once I feel like I got all the production stuff right, all of the technical kinks worked out. I just don't want to bring people on and then you know, have things that aren't right. I want to get everything perfect. We're still learning, we're still growing here, and once I get everything perfect, I can start putting the pedal to the metal with these guests. But Cutler's a guy I hope to have on often, you know, when the trade deadline rolls around, when the NHL playoffs roll around, especially. I mean, you could just hear when we're talking Rangers. It's good stuff. Anyway, that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe.